First story. I allowed my new husband and his family to bully my son and ruin his Christmas. And my ungrateful son planned to go on a trip with his father this year. I demanded he stay with my husband. He didn't, so I canceled his Christmas gift, crashed his trip, and demanded he pack his bags and leave. Then left him outside of my house in the cold as punishment. Now my entitled son has abandoned me. I 38F share custody of my 16-year-old son, Mason, with my ex-husband 40M. We divorced when Mason was 8. He's always lived primarily with me, with weekends and holidays alternating, though we started letting him decide where to spend certain holidays once he hit 14. I've been remarried for 3 years to my current husband, Nathan 41M. Nathan and his family are, to put it plainly, very different from my ex and his side. Nathan's family is traditional, upper middle class, and very tight-knit, and has high expectations when it comes to manners, holidays, and family presentation. They're the type that go overboard with matching outfits, choreographed gift exchanges, rigid dinner schedules, and lots of social media pictures. They're not bad people, but they're not exactly sensitive either. Mason's not into any of that. He's introverted, prefers quiet over chaos, and doesn't care for big family events with people he barely knows. He's also a picky eater, not in a bratty way, just specific habits and comfort food that help him feel settled. He's always been like that. Last Christmas was his first one with me, Nathan, and Nathan's extended family, meaning Nathan's parents, his siblings, their spouses, and all their kids. About 14 people in total. We hosted. I had really hoped it would help us build stronger memories as a blended family, especially since I'd been gently encouraging Mason to try seeing Nathan as part of the family, instead of just Mom's husband. But it went badly. First of all, my in-laws were way too overbearing. They had a habit of asking questions that felt like interviews. Within the first half hour, Mason told me Nathan's mother asked him things like, "So what does your real dad do for work? Does he have a house or an apartment? And, you look more like him than your mom, is he tall like you?" That kind of stuff. They were polite on the surface, but you could tell they didn't think much of Mason's father. Nathan's family has always quietly judged that I used to be married to someone who, in their words, lives modestly. My ex works a blue-collar job. Makes enough, but nowhere near what Nathan brings in. The difference has never been an issue for Mason or me, but it definitely was something the in-laws subtly picked at through comments like, "We're so glad Mason gets to experience a more organized holiday," or, "Bet this is a step up from what you're used to." Mason tried to brush it off, but I could tell it got under his skin. Later, when he told me about those comments, I told him not to take it personally. I even said, "Just ignore them. They're old-fashioned. Focus on enjoying the rest of the day." Looking back, that might have been the moment I messed up. I didn't defend him. I didn't address it. I minimized how uncomfortable he was, thinking I was helping him cope. Then there was the food situation. My in-laws went all out: turkey, ham, 5 different casseroles, cranberry everything, pies, breads, etc. But none of it was food Mason would willingly eat. He's into simpler stuff: grilled cheese, pasta, chicken tenders, and salad with dressing on the side. It's not even allergies or restrictions, he just has food anxiety and specific comfort meals. Always has. I had reminded Nathan's mom beforehand to please include something simple for Mason, and even offered to bring a few things myself. She waved it off and said, "He'll eat what's on the table. This isn't a restaurant." So there wasn't even one dish he liked. He picked at bread and quietly ate a protein bar he'd brought in his jacket pocket. Nobody noticed. Or if they did, they didn't care. Later, during their tradition of watching a movie, the younger kids couldn't access their Netflix profiles. So Nathan told Mason to hand over his phone without asking. Just told him, "Let your cousins use your phone. They want to finish watching Elf." Mason hesitated and tried to say no, but Nathan insisted in front of everyone. I saw Mason hand it over reluctantly, and afterwards he was silent for the rest of the night. When I asked him later how he felt about the day, he didn't say much. Just, "It sucked. I felt like I wasn't even part of it." I told him I was sorry, but again I found myself saying, "Try not to let it ruin everything." That wasn't what he wanted to hear, but I honestly didn't know how to fix it. I thought maybe this year could be better. Fast forward to yesterday. We were having breakfast, just me, Mason, and Nathan, and casually talking about what to do for Christmas this year. I mentioned maybe doing something different, like going to the mountains or having a smaller gathering at home. Mason was quiet the whole time. Then he suddenly goes, "I'm spending Christmas with Dad this year. He booked a cottage in his favorite town, and I already told him I'm going." Nathan and I were caught completely off guard. I asked, "When did this happen?" Mason shrugged and said he and his dad had talked about it a few days ago, and that it was already settled. I asked if they'd planned anything else, who's driving, how long they're staying, what's actually happening, and Mason basically said, "Does it matter? I don't want to be here again for Christmas." That stung. I asked if it was because of last year, and he said, "Yes, it was miserable. I didn't feel welcome. I felt like a charity case. Everyone treated me like some outsider they had to deal with. And you told me to just move on." That shut me up for a second. Because he wasn't wrong. I did tell him that. He's remembered that whole day, every piece of it. I'd hoped he'd forget. That maybe it hadn't hit him that deeply. He went on. Nathan's family acted like I was some sad poor kid. They asked weird questions about Dad. I don't want to do that again. Nathan started to respond but stopped. I could tell he was surprised Mason was still so bitter about last year. But it was like neither of us knew what to say. The silence got thick fast. Then I told Mason that if he was planning on leaving town for Christmas, his dad should have brought it up with me first. Traveling out of town, taking a minor holiday arrangements, that's not something you just spring on the other parent after it's already set. Mason didn't agree. He said, "I'm old enough to decide." I told Dad I wanted to go. He said okay, and that's it. I don't need to ask your permission. It's not like I'm 5. We argued. I told him I wasn't saying no, but that the way he and his dad handled this felt sneaky. Like it was deliberately kept from me. He said it wasn't sneaky. It was just his decision, and he's done explaining himself. I said Christmas was important to me, and he replied, "It wasn't important last year when I was miserable." Then I said something I probably shouldn't have. I told him, "Well, you've already ruined it this year for me and for Nathan." He froze, looked at me for a second, and said, "Seriously, that's how you see it?" Then he got up and left the table. Nathan didn't say much, just looked down at his plate. He didn't come back downstairs the rest of the day. I gave him space, but later I called his dad. Not to fight, I just wanted to know what the plan actually was. I asked when they booked the cottage, how long they were staying, and why he hadn't called me first. His answer, "Why would I?" He said he wanted to come. It's not like I kidnapped him. I told him that wasn't the point. You don't arrange a multi-day trip with a minor without checking with the other parent. He laughed and said, "You're really losing it over a holiday. You sound pathetic." I told him if this trip was happening without my consent or coordination, I'd be having my lawyer reach out. He immediately changed his tone, said, "Look, I wouldn't have said yes if Mason wasn't the one asking. He was the one who texted me. He's the one who brought it up." I figured, why not? You can't force him to do another holiday he hates. I asked him again why he couldn't just give me a heads up before agreeing. His answer? "Because I knew you'd react like this, that's why." Then he said something I haven't been able to shake. "Let it go, or he's going to remember this as the year you made Christmas about yourself." That call ended without resolution. I didn't agree to the trip, but I also didn't say no. Because what would that even look like? Telling Mason he's grounded from Christmas. Dragging him to something he's dreading. How do I win that? Now it's been 2 days. Mason isn't speaking to me unless he has to. Nathan's trying to hold things together, but I can tell he feels sidelined. He keeps suggesting smaller plans, saying maybe we do something low-key on Christmas Eve instead, or offering to do our own getaway if Mason's willing to compromise. But it's clear he's already checked out. Nathan's not the type to fight for closeness. He's reserved, and Mason has never been particularly close to him. It's polite, surface level, they coexist. This wasn't just about a Christmas trip. I think it was the last straw for Mason after years of feeling like a guest in a house that's supposed to be his. I can't argue with that. He was never treated like one of the grandkids. Nathan's family never asked what he liked or made an effort to involve him in anything that wasn't already part of their plans. They still call my ex your real dad when talking to him. They've never tried to hide the fact that they think I married up this time. Last year, Nathan's sister asked Mason if he gets child support from his dad. At the dinner table, I should have shut that down immediately. Instead, I told Mason afterwards to ignore it, that she was just being nosy. I didn't want to start anything with Nathan's family, so I told Mason to be the bigger person. That became a pattern. I didn't stand up for him enough. I see that now. It's not that I favored Nathan's side. I was just trying to keep peace. But in doing that, I left Mason feeling like he didn't have backup. This year, he took matters into his own hands. And now he's gone quiet on me. I tried talking to him again last night. I said I wasn't mad that he wanted to be with his dad. I just wish he'd told me first. That it hurt to be left out of the decision entirely. He barely looked up from his phone and said, "You never listened when I told you how bad last year was. Now suddenly you care." I asked him what he meant. He said, "You kept saying to move on. You said not to take it personally. You let them talk about Dad like he's some loser. You acted like I was making it a bigger deal than it was. So I stopped talking about it." There's not much to say to that. He's right. Now I'm sitting here, a few weeks before Christmas, realizing my son wants nothing to do with the plans I've made, and I'm the last one to know about it. Nathan says it's just a phase, but I don't think it is. I think it's the first time Mason stopped trying to meet us halfway. I keep thinking about what his dad said. Let it go, or he'll remember this forever. But what about me? What about how I'll remember it? The year my son chose to walk away from this house because it didn't feel like his. Am I the arsehole for not just dropping it? I know I messed up last year. I let people talk down to my son and tried to smooth it over instead of shutting it down. I let Nathan take the lead too often and told Mason to adapt instead of backing him up. I didn't realize how deep the resentment went. But does that mean I don't even get a say now? Does it really make me the arsehole to expect some kind of discussion before a whole trip is booked? Reddit, I know this might sound like a parent clinging to control, but I don't think it's that simple. I'm trying to figure out if I'm just hurt, or if I actually did something wrong by pushing back. So, Ada, if I don't drop this. Comments. Comment 1. YTA. So your son can choose where to go, but only if he chooses your house. Come on. He gave your family a shot last year. You let him get grilled about his dad's income, forced him to hand over his phone, ignored what he liked to eat, and told him to suck it up when he said it bothered him. You didn't fix it. You defended the people who made him feel like crap. And now he's choosing a peaceful holiday with the one person who doesn't dismiss him. And you're pissed. Calling lawyers? Guilt-tripping a 16-year-old? You didn't lose Christmas. You just got reminded it's not always about you. If you want your kid to want to come back next year, fix what made him want to leave this time. Comment 2. Look, Mason didn't just wake up one morning pissed about last Christmas. This sounds like years of being quietly dismissed or made to feel like a background character in your life. You've been trying to blend families, but didn't notice your kid never got a seat at the table literally and figuratively. Nathan's family asking invasive crap about his dad, judging his clothes or how much money his father makes, not even bothering to cook one damn dish he likes, and your reaction was to tell him to let it go. He stopped talking to you about this stuff because he learned you wouldn't do anything. That's not you being a bad mom. That's you being worn out and trying to keep peace in the wrong direction. I've done it. I've bitten my tongue when I shouldn't have. And I've paid for it later. Your ex might be a petty arsehole for laughing at you, sure. But he's the one who listened. He's the one Mason called when he needed out. That didn't happen in a vacuum. So no, I don't think you're the devil here. But Mason's made it clear where he feels safe. And that's the part you've got to deal with. Not whether the cottage trip was approved. You already lost the Christmas battle when you ignored the war happening in front of you last year. Comment 3. People here are really piling on you. And I won't do that, but I will point out what I see. You tried to merge two lives and missed all the cracks forming underneath. You married someone who comes from a very different world than your son. Their values are not his values. They care about appearances, routines, and performance. Mason clearly doesn't fit into that mold. That's fine, plenty of teens don't, but what's not fine is that nobody in Nathan's family made a real effort to meet Mason where he is. And when he expressed discomfort, you downplayed it. I also noticed something important. You said Nathan just sat there looking down. That tells me he knows this is a deeper issue. He probably feels guilty too, but doesn't know how to reach Mason because their relationship was never built, it was expected to exist. Mason chose his dad because right now he needs peace, comfort, familiarity. You tried to create a new version of family and didn't realize how much of the original one your son was still holding on to. So yes, you're hurt. Rightfully so. But if you want to reconnect, stop focusing on being included and start making him feel wanted without conditions. That means calling out Nathan's family when they cross lines. That means cooking something just for him. That means making this not about who he's spending Christmas with, but about why he doesn't want to spend it with you. Comment 4. YTA. Let me get this straight. He spends a holiday being treated like crap. You tell him to get over it. And now you're shocked he doesn't want to do that again. What were you expecting? That he'd come crawling back for round 2, just to keep your holiday plans intact? You say he gets to decide. But the second he doesn't choose you, you blow up his phone, threaten legal action, and say he ruined Christmas for you and Nathan. What did he ruin? Exactly your chance to pretend everything's fine. He didn't ruin anything. He protected himself. And if that hurts your feelings, maybe reflect on why the place he's supposed to feel most comfortable in feels like a damn interview panel with judgmental relatives. Act like his mom, not his warden. Update. So a lot has happened since I posted. I didn't respond to comments, but I read more than I care to admit. Some were harsh, some were dead on. And while I'm still not sure how I feel about most of it, I owe an update. Mason didn't change his mind. He left a few days before Christmas, packed everything without saying much, and went to the cottage his dad rented in a town he's always liked. Nathan tried once more to talk him into staying. Mason barely reacted. Just said, "I already made plans." That was it. I felt like I'd been benched from my own family. Nathan saw I wasn't letting this go and tried talking me down from doing anything rash. I suggested having a dinner before Mason left, and maybe inviting his in-laws over so they could make things right. Nathan shut that down fast. He said Mason wasn't interested in performative apologies, and dragging his parents into it would just make it worse. He also said they didn't mean anything malicious last year, that they're just set in their ways, and we shouldn't overreact and make them feel like they did something wrong. So I dropped that idea. But the whole thing sat wrong with me. Mason had his whole Christmas booked and didn't even blink when walking out the door. I couldn't stop thinking about what he said, that he didn't feel like part of the family here, that he felt judged, ignored, and stuck. I thought maybe if he saw we still cared, we could still be part of it in some way. So I made a call I probably shouldn't have. I booked a small cabin in the same complex where he and his dad were staying. Not with them, but just down the path, close enough to see them from our porch. I didn't tell Mason. I didn't even tell my ex. I told Nathan we were going out of town for a few days, and we'd figure the rest out when we got there. He asked one question. "You didn't book a place near them, did you?" I said, "It's just a coincidence." He knew I was lying but didn't want to argue, so he let it go. We arrived on Christmas Eve. Their cabin was about 100 feet from ours, facing the lake. My plan was simple. We'd bump into them casually, offer to do a short hike or grab hot cocoa. Just ease back into something neutral. Mason spotted us immediately. He was walking back with a grocery bag, saw us on the path, and froze. I said, "Hey, surprise. We thought we'd do something spontaneous this year." He didn't say anything, just kept walking to the cabin. I knocked later that evening. My ex opened the door and immediately said, "You've got to be kidding me." I said we weren't trying to invade. We just wanted to be nearby. He said, "Right? You just happened to book the same lake town. Stay in your lane, seriously." I didn't push it then. I went back, tried to relax, and told myself tomorrow would be different. On Christmas morning, I went over again, this time with a small box of things Mason had left behind: gloves, a scarf, and a wrapped gift. I told him I just wanted to drop it off. He took the gloves, but didn't take the gift, said, "I don't need anything from you." That cut deep. I handed it to his dad anyway and left. Later that afternoon, I knocked again. My ex opened the door looking irritated. Mason was in the back. I could hear the TV. I asked if we could take him for an hour or two, grab lunch, or walk through the little Christmas market in town. My ex asked Mason, who said, "No, I'm good here." I said, "You've had time with your dad already. Let us take you out now." Mason called out from the couch, "I'm not a puppy. You don't get to pass me around." I stood there, stunned. That night, after dinner at our cabin, I told Nathan I was going over one last time. He told me, "Don't make a scene. Just let him be." I said, "This is my son. I won't be brushed off like a stranger." So I went back and knocked again. Mason answered this time, looking tired. I said, "Pack your stuff. I booked something special, just us. It's Christmas. I want to spend it with you." He stared at me for a second, then laughed the kind of laugh that says, "You're joking, right?" He said, "I've told you I'm staying here. Stop pushing." I told him I didn't come all this way just to watch him play house with his dad. I said I was trying, that I'd shown up, respected his choice, and given him space. That now it was time to come with us. That we'd planned something meaningful, and this wasn't fair. He said, "You didn't do this for me. You came here to win. And you're still losing." My ex came up behind him and told me to leave. I told him he was a joke of a parent letting Mason eat whatever garbage he wanted. Stay staying up till 2 a.m., and not showering regularly. I said Mason looked worn down and like no one was looking after him. He told me Mason was fine and to leave before things got worse. I left. I didn't say goodbye. Nathan said we should just go home, but I refused. We stayed until the 26th. I thought maybe Mason would change his mind and knock on our door. He didn't. On the way home, Nathan didn't say much. Just drove in silence. When we got back, I tried to pull together something. I texted a few friends and invited over Nathan's side. Threw together a dinner, made everything look festive. Posted some of it on Instagram, photos of us smiling, captioned, "Finding joy where we can." But it was hollow. Nathan's nephews were glued to their phones. His mom made some comment about how quiet the house felt this year. I just nodded and pretended I didn't hear it. The next morning, I checked my phone. Mason hadn't texted. I finally opened the gift box I'd left at their cabin. Inside was the watch Mason had wanted since last spring. I had it engraved on the back. "You'll always belong with us, love, Mum and Nathan." He never even opened it. I put it in the drawer. Haven't looked at it since. I thought doing all this would prove I cared, that showing up would show him I was serious. But maybe what he needed wasn't effort. Maybe he needed space. Or maybe he just needed me to actually listen a year ago, instead of brushing things off and expecting him to move on. And now I'm left with a Christmas table full of half-eaten food, a husband who's questioning how long he'll keep playing second to a broken family dynamic, and a son who won't even respond to my texts. So for everyone who said I should let it go, I didn't. And now I'm wondering if that was the final push that made him go for good. Comments. Comment 1. You flew too close to the sun, OP. Your kid told you exactly what he wanted: space, peace, and not to be roped into another performance. Instead of taking that seriously, you booked a cabin next door like some Lifetime movie mom trying to win back her child with sneaky tactics. That wasn't love. That was about image. You wanted to be able to say, "See, I showed up. I made the effort." But showing up uninvited doesn't prove anything if you're not actually listening. Mason didn't shut down over one Christmas. This is years of being made to feel like he doesn't fit. Nathan's family sounds condescending at best, and you've been too worried about keeping the adults happy to notice your kid has emotionally checked out. And dragging Nathan into this mess. Forcing him to play support while you stalked your son's holiday. He was done the moment you booked that trip without asking him. If you're not careful, you'll be spending next Christmas alone, wondering how you lost both of them. Comment 2. This was painful to read, not because of drama, but because it's clear you're unraveling and have no idea how to reach him anymore. You keep trying to do things: gifts, surprise visits, Instagram perfect dinners, but none of it addresses what actually broke between you. You didn't lose Mason over one holiday. You lost him over a dozen ignored comments and 100 small moments where he was treated like a guest instead of your son. He got tired of being the only one adapting. And when he finally took space, instead of respecting that, you tried to bulldoze through it under the guise of effort. I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're hurting. But right now, your hurt is louder than his. And until that changes, every gift you send will just feel like guilt wrapped in ribbon. Your next move shouldn't be another visit. It should be silence, and then, eventually, accountability. Comment 3. Jesus. You stalked your kid's vacation. What's worse is you still don't get why he wanted out in the first place. You gave your in-laws a free pass to act like judgmental arseholes. You let your husband shrug it all off. And when Mason said, "I'm done," your first reaction was to corner him in the woods and tell him to pack a bag. You didn't go to reconnect. You went to reclaim something that wasn't yours anymore. Your kid didn't owe you his holiday. He owes you nothing after being pushed aside year after year so Nathan's people could play picture-perfect family. And Nathan? I give it 6 months before he checks out completely. You dragged him along for your emotional campaign and made him part of a battle he clearly never signed up for. You've turned this into a competition, and Mason's already walked off the field. You might want to do the same before you destroy what little is left. Update. I need to write this out because I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And I don't think I understood the consequences of what I said until it was already too late. Mason came back from the Christmas trip 3 days after New Year's. He didn't even text. I heard the doorbell and looked through the window and saw him standing there with his backpack. I felt this rush of relief followed by anger so sharp, I didn't even stop to think. All I could hear in my head was everything that had happened before Christmas. Him walking away. Him refusing to take the gift. Him choosing his dad over this home. I was still carrying that resentment. and I was tired of being the only one apologizing. I opened the door and said, "Why are you here?" He looked confused and said, "I came home." I told him this wasn't home if he was just going to disappear whenever he felt like it. I said he made his choice already. I said if he wanted to live with his dad so badly, then he should do that full time. He just stood there, quiet, and then said, "Okay." I didn't expect that. I expected an argument. I expected him to say something. Instead, he turned around, picked up his bags, and started walking back down the driveway. I closed the door. I didn't think it would end like that. I thought he'd come back in 5 minutes, or later that night, or the next day. I thought he'd cool off like I was planning to. I told myself he needed space. I told myself I was teaching him something about respect. He didn't come back that night. The next morning, I waited. I kept checking my phone. Nothing. By evening, I texted him. "Are you coming back?" No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. That's when I called his dad. I told him Mason showed up unannounced, and I didn't appreciate it. I said he was being manipulative, bouncing between houses, avoiding real conversations. My ex lost it. He said, "I left my kid standing outside in the cold and shut the door on him." He called me heartless. He called me selfish. He said Mason cried in the car and barely spoke for the rest of the night. Then he said something that keeps replaying in my head. "You finally showed him who you really chose." He said Mason is staying with him permanently. That he won't be passed around anymore. That I should enjoy my big house, my perfect husband, and my comfortable life, because that's what I've been building without my kid anyway. I told him he couldn't do that. He laughed and said, "You already did." He hung up. Nathan supported me at first. He said Mason showing up without notice wasn't okay. He said I reacted harshly, but he understood why. He said kids don't get to treat adults like optional furniture. For a day, that helped. I told myself I wasn't wrong. Mason made adult choices. Adult choices have consequences. But then the silence set in. No texts. No calls. Nothing. Days passed. I tried calling Mason again. He didn't answer. I left one voicemail and kept it short. Said I wanted to talk. No response. I started spiraling. I called my lawyer and asked what my options were. She said we could look into enforcing custody again, but she needed to know whether Nathan supported that. When I told Nathan, he shut down. He said dragging Mason through court again would destroy whatever chance there was of fixing things. He said Mason is old enough that forcing him back would only make him hate this house more. He said if we go that route, he won't be involved. That was the first time I felt Nathan pulling away. Things got worse when his family got involved. His mother called first. She said she'd heard about the situation and wanted to offer advice. She said something like, "You can't pour your whole heart into someone who doesn't want it." Then she suggested, very casually, that maybe it was time to focus on building a future with Nathan, instead of clinging to a relationship that clearly wasn't working anymore. She said Nathan deserved a child who wanted to be here. That I shouldn't waste my energy chasing someone who treats me poorly. His sister said something similar. She said Mason made his feelings clear. That I shouldn't keep reopening wounds. That I could still be happy if I stopped holding on to what I can't fix. I didn't say much on those calls. I just listened. But Nathan noticed I was upset afterwards and asked what they said. I repeated it, thinking he'd shut it down. He didn't. He said they were probably trying to protect him. He said watching me fall apart over Mason was taking a toll on our marriage. He said he felt like our life was on pause because I couldn't accept that Mason might not want to come back. Then he said something that hurt more than I expected. I didn't sign up to be the consolation prize. I snapped at him. I said Mason is my son, not a phase, not a problem to be replaced. I said if he thought the answer was to pretend Mason never existed and start over, then he didn't understand me at all. We haven't talked much since. I keep going back to that moment at the door. I keep thinking if I'd said something different, if I'd just stepped aside and let Mason inside, everything would look different now. But I didn't. I drew a line I didn't know how to erase. Now I'm stuck. If I push legally, Nathan won't back me. If I don't push, I might never see my son again. If I apologize, I don't even know if Mason will listen. If I wait, I don't know if waiting means acceptance or abandonment. I don't want to lose my son. I don't want to replace him. I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. But right now, I don't know how to fix something I broke in one sentence. I keep wondering if I finally pushed him to a place where coming back feels impossible. And the longer I wait, the easier it becomes for everyone else to tell me to let him go. Comments. Comment 1. You told your kid to leave, and then got surprised when he listened. You shut the door literally and figured he'd come crawling back once your feelings cooled down. That's not parenting. That's power tripping. Mason's been giving you signs for a while. First he chose his dad. Then he shut down every effort you made to drag him back. But instead of reflecting, you doubled down, tracking him to the cottage, blowing up at his dad, and guilt-tripping him with engraved watches and fake family dinners. He didn't fall for it. He saw through it. And now you're looking at court because you feel abandoned, not because you think he's unsafe. You're mad he didn't beg to come home. But what home? The one where he's tolerated. Where Nathan's family picks him apart, and nobody defends him. You're not ready to do what he actually needs. Shut up and listen. So yeah, he went to the parent who did. Comment 2. I cut off my mom at 17. This post gave me flashbacks. It's always the same. They push, we break. And when we finally stop bending, they act like we burned the bridge. But the bridge was made of matchsticks. One gust, and it was gone. You keep saying you want to be present in your son's life. But when he gave you chances to show up differently, you panicked and performed. You dragged Nathan into it. You booked a cabin next door. You forced Christmas through a guilt filter and called it love. You don't love who he is, you love who you want him to be. Let me be real with you. Once a kid stops seeing their parent as safe, it takes years to undo. If ever. You closed that door thinking he'd wait on the porch. He didn't. And now you're stuck between losing your marriage and losing your kid because you never picked him until it was too late. Comment 3. You fumbled the bag so hard, and now you're standing in the ruins going, wait, where did everyone go? Let me break it down for you. You let your husband's family talk SHT about your son and his dad. You let them feed him stuff he didn't eat, mock his background, and treat him like a guest in his own damn life. And when he tried to leave with dignity, you trailed him like a helicopter and made the whole thing about your pain. Then you had the nerve to turn him away at the door and expect him to come back with flowers. What universe is that normal in? You don't want a relationship. You want credit. For showing up. For caring. For trying. But here's the thing. Kids don't give it SHT about effort if all it brings is more pain. He went where he was heard. You want him back? Don't chase. Fix your SHT. Let go of the husband who treats this like an inconvenience. And stop performing love like it's a stage play. Update. I didn't expect things to unravel this fast. But here we are. After Mason didn't come back, I tried to convince myself I was doing the healthy thing by stepping back. I told myself I wasn't chasing anymore. I even told a friend, out loud, that I was letting him decide. But the truth is I was still thinking about him every hour of the day, replaying that moment at the door and telling myself he'd realize I meant what I said once the emotions passed. A week went by. Then another. Still nothing. That's when Nathan's family got more vocal. His mother called again and said I needed to stop living in limbo. She said this situation was poisoning my marriage and that I was letting a teenager dictate the emotional climate of our home. She suggested I pack up the rest of Mason's things and take them to his dad's place so he could settle properly. She said it would give everyone clarity, including Mason. She also repeated what she'd hinted at before, that maybe it was time to focus on building a complete family with Nathan, instead of chasing someone who clearly didn't want me around. I didn't agree outright, but that conversation planted something ugly in my head. The idea that maybe I was the only one still pretending this relationship could be repaired. That maybe closure meant finality. So 2 days later, while Nathan was at work, I went into Mason's room. His room had stayed exactly the same since he left. Bed unmade. School papers stacked on the desk. That stupid hoodie I keep telling him to wash is hanging on the chair. I stood there for a while just looking at it, feeling ridiculous for thinking he'd walk back into it like nothing happened. I packed everything. Clothes, shoes, books, old trophies, childhood stuff I probably should have kept. I put it all in boxes and bags. I also wrote a letter. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't warm either. It was long. Too long. I wrote about how much I loved him, how hurt I was, how I hoped he'd be happy, how I felt pushed aside, and how I tried. I wrote that I was giving him space so he could figure out what he wanted without pressure. I told myself it was for clarity. I didn't ask him to come back in the letter. I think part of me didn't want to hear no again. I drove everything to my ex's house and left it on the porch. I didn't knock. I didn't text Mason. I left the letter taped to the top box and drove away with my stomach in knots. That night, Nathan came home early. He saw Mason's room empty and immediately knew what I had done. He didn't raise his voice. That somehow made it worse. He just asked, "Did you really do that without telling me?" I told him it needed to be done. That turned into a long argument. I accused Nathan of never backing me when it mattered, of always siding with his parents, and of treating my son like an inconvenience. He shot back that I had turned every disagreement into a loyalty test, and that he was exhausted from being dragged into a war he didn't start. Then he said something that changed everything. "I can't live in a house where I'm constantly waiting for the next blow-up over a kid who doesn't even want to be here." I told him Mason was my son, and that wasn't negotiable. He said neither was his sanity. 2 days later, he moved out. 3 days after that, I was served divorce papers. That alone should have snapped me into reality. It didn't. Instead, I spiraled. I tried reaching Mason again after leaving his things. I called. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I sent one last message asking if he'd read the letter. Still nothing. I panicked and went back to his dad's place one evening without telling anyone. I knocked. My ex answered and immediately told me to leave. I said I just needed to talk to Mason. He said Mason didn't want to see me, and that if I didn't leave, he'd call the police. Mason didn't come to the door. I don't even know if he was home or if my ex was lying. Either way, I left shaking. I tried a different approach after that. I dropped off some money in an envelope at my ex's place with a note saying it was for school expenses, no strings attached. My ex mailed it back to me with no note. Then I reached out to a mutual connection, Mason's old soccer coach, asking if he could check in on Mason and tell him I was worried. I thought hearing from someone neutral might help. The coach told me Mason said he didn't want messages relayed anymore and asked me not to involve other people. I think that was the moment it finally hit me that every attempt I made was pushing him further away. Meanwhile, Nathan stopped responding to my messages, except through his lawyer. He made it clear he was done. He said the house felt like a battleground, and that my inability to let go had cost us everything. His parents stopped calling me altogether. Now the house is quiet in a way that feels unnatural. No teenage noise. No arguments. No husband. Just rooms full of reminders of decisions I can't take back. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel relieved. I feel like I amputated something thinking it would stop the pain, only to realize the pain just moved somewhere deeper. I don't want to replace my son. I don't want to erase him. I don't want a clean slate that costs me my relationship with him. I also don't know how to undo what I did without making things worse. I told myself I was done chasing. But now that everyone else seems to have moved on, my ex, my husband, his family, I'm the only one still standing in the wreckage, wondering how everything fell apart so completely. And I don't know if there's a version of this where Mason ever comes back. Comments. Comment 1. I read this, and all I saw was a woman digging a grave one shovel at a time while swearing she was planting a tree. You didn't step back. You iced your son out, boxed up his life, slapped a pity letter on top, and acted like that was love. And when he didn't fall apart at your doorstep, you went into panic mode and dragged anyone you could down with you, your husband, his family, even some poor coach just doing his job. You want credit for feeling sad. You want credit for showing up late and broken, but never actually different. That's why he's done. You taught him over and over that your version of love comes with a catch. And when he finally asked you to stop, you went harder. You didn't just lose him. You made leaving easy. And that's the part no parent wants to admit. Sometimes they don't come back because we made staying worse. Comment 2. You nuked your relationship with your son, torched your marriage, and isolated yourself from every side of your family. And all of it started because your in-laws couldn't stop acting like snobs over mashed potatoes and Netflix access. This whole mess reads like a slow-motion crash. You thought packing up his stuff would make him realize what he lost. He saw it as proof you gave up. You wrote a letter. Cool. But letters don't mean SHT when the person you're writing to has spent years getting steamrolled and minimized. It's words after silence. Too little, too late. Also, Nathan dipped because he finally realized he wasn't the husband in a blended family. He was background noise in your drama with your ex and your need to win Mason back. And Mason, he's done playing ping pong between two houses. He chose the one that stopped making his existence conditional. You need to sit with this. No fixes, no rebrands. Just silence. Let the damage breathe. It's the only shot you've got left. Comment 3. I can see how much you want to be the mother he remembers. But honestly, the way you went about everything told him you were someone else entirely. Packing up his room wasn't strength. It was you writing him out before he had a chance to come back. That letter. Probably the 100th time he's heard you explain your pain instead of asking about his. You want to be part of his life. But every step you took was about reestablishing your comfort, not his safety. Nathan leaving. That was the byproduct of someone who realized you were more committed to chasing ghosts than building a present. You clung to the idea of fixing something, while making damn sure no one around you felt safe enough to actually help. At this point, Mason has clarity. You gave it to him. It hurts like hell. But maybe now you'll stop trying to patch the relationship and actually start grieving the one you refused to protect when it counted. Second story. Mom physically assaulted me after I told her my fiancé is my first cousin from the family she hated and ran away from. Throwaway, because this is a massive secret, and we are fully expecting it to blow up in our faces. I never thought I would post here, but the holidays uncovered something huge, and my fiancé and I genuinely have no idea what to do. I grew up in a fairly large city in the South with just my mom, my younger brother, and me. My dad died of cancer when I was 4, and my mom supported us by working as an accountant for a mid-sized company. It was always just the big three, as my mom liked to say. I have never known anyone from her side of the family. She has always been extremely private about her upbringing, but as I got older I picked up bits and pieces. Whenever we saw family, it was always my dad's side. My parents met as adults, but after my dad died, my grandpa really stepped up in my life. He took me to father-daughter dances, came to baptisms and major milestones, and was always present. When I asked about my mom's side of the family, I usually got short answers like, they're bad people, or, we live far away for a reason. As far as I know, my mom left home when she was around 17 and never spoke to anyone from her family again. My grandparents on my dad's side never met anyone from her side. Almost 4 years ago, I got into a great university far from home. My grandpa drove me down to campus and helped me move in. During orientation, I met Tom, not his real name. We clicked instantly. Same humor, same values, and a connection I had honestly never felt before. We became best friends very quickly and soon started dating. Tom is also from far away, but our hometowns are extremely far from each other. Over the years, I spent some holidays with his family, and he spent some with mine. My mom, my brother, and my grandpa, who passed away around Thanksgiving this year, all adored him and were very vocal about wanting me to marry him. His family accepted me just as warmly. Last year, his parents even gave him a large gift to help pay for an engagement ring. He proposed this past August, right around the anniversary of when we met. We are planning to get married in June, shortly after we graduate. One more piece of context before the actual problem. Tom and I became sexually active about a month ago. We were both virgins when we met and had decided we wanted to wait until marriage. After he proposed, we decided together that we were comfortable taking that step, especially since I am on birth control and we were already planning a wedding. Our parents assume we are waiting, but no one has ever directly asked. Until now, this has not been a point of stress for us. Here is where everything falls apart. This past Christmas, I stayed with Tom's family. My mom and my paternal grandmother are in the middle of an argument I did not want to be involved in, and my mom was completely fine with me going elsewhere. While at Tom's family gathering, his mom's parents came over, and we all had a big holiday meal, opened gifts, and had a great time. They even gave me several gifts with their last name on them. At some point during the evening, Tom's grandmother made a comment to his mom, who I will call Melissa. She said, "Melissa, do you remember when you and Rachel got me that planter for Christmas?" I leant over and quietly asked Tom who Rachel was. He looked confused and said it was his mom's twin sister, who disappeared years ago. He had never met her. I immediately felt uneasy. My mother's name is Rachel, although she has gone by her middle name my entire life. I also knew she had siblings, one sister and one brother. Tom had mentioned an uncle who passed away around 2010. At the time, I convinced myself it was just a strange coincidence. Later that night, people were moving around the house, and Tom and I ended up sitting alone together with some wine. I whispered something like, "I didn't know your mom had a twin." I think at that exact moment it hit both of us. About a year ago, while dating, we had already realized our mothers shared the same birthday. We thought it was funny and even mentioned it casually once to his mom. We both started internally freaking out, but kept it together for the rest of the visit. The next day, I flew home to see my mom. Before I got there, Tom and I came up with a plan. I told my mom I had been talking to my gynecologist about some issues with my period, and that one of the intake questions asked whether there were twins in my family. I said I didn't know and figured I should ask. For the first time in my life, my mom admitted she was a twin. When I asked why she never told me, she went on a long, drunken rant about how her sister Melissa was a literal demon. My mom is, unfortunately, drunk most of the time. She also mentioned cutting her family off completely when she was young. What is wild is that my mum and Tom's mum look absolutely nothing alike. One is tall and brunette. The other is short and blonde. At that point, everything clicked. We confirmed last names, which were the same. I also learned my mum's maiden name for the first time in my life, which I know is strange, but she is intensely private. Tom and I are first cousins. We have no idea what to do next. Our parents have never met, but they are supposed to meet at our wedding in 6 months. We have already built a future around each other. Tom has a great job lined up, and I have been accepted early decision to my dream law school in the same city. Our relationship is genuinely strong. We are best friends and deeply in love. Ending the relationship feels like throwing away the greatest joy either of us has ever had. Continuing it feels terrifying. There are obvious biological concerns if we ever want children. There is also the very real possibility of being disowned or pressured to split once the truth comes out. We are stuck and completely overwhelmed. What do we do? Edit 1. Thanks for all the kind comments. Tom and I have read through all of them, and we really appreciate the thoughts. We have decided to talk to our parents tonight. We both fly back to college tomorrow, so it's really the last time we can do this before it gets dangerously close to the wedding. I'll give an update on how it goes either tonight or tomorrow at the airport. We plan to tell them what we've learned, but insist it won't affect our plans to marry. Hopefully, if we lead with that, there won't be an effort to break us up. Comments. Commenter 1. At least they weren't identical, so you're only first cousins. OP. We are first cousins. I'm not sure that would change if they were identical twins. We might be more genetically similar, I guess. Commenter 2. Do one of those DNA tests and see how much DNA you share. My grandparents found out they were third cousins after they got married. Their parents knew as well. Not quite the same, but they made it work. OP. This is good advice. But there's also some blissful ignorance here. Like at what % do we draw the line? Do OP and Tom want to have children? OP. Yeah, we already talked about going the adoption route and avoiding biologicals. Commenter 3. Just be sure, if you ever get pregnant, to disclose this to your medical practitioner. Babies from close relatives have a significantly higher risk of genetic complications. But also, because cousin marriage is so common, especially within certain religious and ethnic groups, they will know how to handle it. OP. Good advice. I am currently in the never getting pregnant camp. We already take stupid risks, though, so this will tighten that up. Commenter 4. Did your mum never know Tom's last name or where he was from? It seems odd she never asked more, considering the coincidence of him having her same last name and city of origin. But I guess he could have the same last name as his dad rather than your mum's family. This is so unfortunate. If you guys are okay with adopting rather than having biological children, maybe Tom could get snipped to avoid the possibility. And just go through with the marriage. Does that seem like the right route in your heart? Maybe confide in your mother about it, and consider keeping it from his family if they would freak out. Not sure if that is the best idea either, as she would have to avoid his family forever, photos included, if they would still recognize her. Best of luck to you. What a crazy, crazy coincidence. OP. Tom's last name is not her maiden name, it's his dad's name. It's also a really unique last name with a unique pronunciation. Nothing like my last name or my mother's maiden name. The coincidence is crazier than I can even describe. No one lives in the same state as the last time they all met, and our college is far from that. It's really, really unbelievable that this happened to me. Commenter 5. First cousin marriage is illegal in many US states, and whether or not those states recognize a marriage performed in a legal state varies. Just something to keep in mind when making a choice, as you'd be limited in where you can live move to if you did stay together. Commenter 6. This is a very important point that OP needs to fully wrap her head around ASAP. OP, can you say what state you're in? OP, our wedding venue and planned life are in New York State. OP on. If it's legal to have first cousin marriage in her area. OP. It is legal in our state, but not in the state Tom is from. We never planned on living there anyway. OP on her mother, when asked about being a twin. OP, To be fair, when I asked my mother if twins ran in the family, she acted like I was stupid. She swore I knew she was a twin, and she had told me. Maybe it never stuck. I feel like that would stick. The family reaction is certainly my fear. Thanks for the kind words. Commenter 7. As I have said above, the cousin thing is one thing, but your mother meeting her estranged twin at your wedding is going to cause absolute carnage. This must be aired before the wedding, and you need to face the possibility of your mother making you choose. You say she's drunk most of the time, so I'm guessing she isn't the best mom, or else you wouldn't have added that information. Tom's mother also needs to know. Or there is another option. You tell your mother. She demands you choose. You choose Tom, disinviting your family to the wedding. You say nothing to Tom's mother. It's not recommended, but this is all going to go disastrously wrong. I think if I could accept he was my first cousin, I'd just elope and keep the families separate as far as possible. OP. I fear if we tell our mothers, then our whole support system will fall out beneath us if we don't break up. It's almost like we have to be willing to break up if we tell them, and neither of us wants to break up at all. OP explains if there are any similar resemblances between Tom and herself. OP. We have often been mistaken for siblings. Our friend group has joked about putting us on a sibling or dating website before. We have very similar hair, curly, dark brown, and thick. He's taller than me. His dad is like 6'5", though, and my dad was like 5'8". OP needs to get therapy to deal with her mother due to her alcoholism and the family issues. OP. I've had some therapy to deal with my mother, and there's a level of codependency that's hard to explain. Once my dad died, my brother was a very small infant, and I was like 4. My mother and I really bonded, even though she would put us to bed and hit the bottle every night. It's hard to explain, but it is really hard for me to cut her off. Honestly, since going to therapy my freshman year, I sort of figured she was the problem to some extent. Maybe this will shed light on the whole situation for me. I've only met Tom's grandparents, also mine, twice, and they seemed super normal. Just really conservative, but my mom is really conservative too. Update. I didn't expect this story to get so much attention, but I appreciate all the kind words and encouragement. I also appreciate everyone who reached out kindly in my DMs. Sorry if I haven't responded yet. As you'll soon read, my life is a little upside down. I wrote the original post in the early afternoon. At the time, my mother was out buying my brother new clothes for his upcoming semester. I decided I would confront her after dinner. Tom and I agreed that I would tell my mom that night, and then we would figure out how to tell his parents. Dinner came, and I wasn't eating. My brother kept asking why, so I eventually gave in and told my mom I had something important I needed to talk to her about privately. She seemed to recognize the seriousness of my tone and told my brother to go to the gas station to buy scratchers. When he left, I told her everything, starting with, "This is really big news, but I want you to know that I intend to continue my relationship with Tom." I told her I had been at Tom's house and learned that Tom's mom had an estranged twin and that I was confident it was her. I said the full legal names of Tom's mom and his maternal grandparents. I knew I was right by the shade of red my mother turned. She kept saying, "What? And is this a effing joke?" I even showed her Tom's mom's Facebook. My mother has no social media and never has, as far as I know. At first, my mom went silent while I sobbed. Then she erupted. She told me I needed to leave Tom immediately and never speak to him again. I told her I wasn't going to do that. She started yelling about how Tom's family was spreading lies about her to me. They do not even know. She was being paranoid. I told her I didn't need to tell them anything, that she could keep this secret and simply never meet them. Since his family is paying for the entire wedding, I suggested she not attend so she would never have to interact with them. That suggestion was not taken well. She called me every name in the book. W, liar, BTCH, CNT, etc. She screamed at me until she was blue in the face and told me she would not allow me to return to school for my final semester. Around this time, my brother came home. He is a pretty low-key guy and does not handle conflict well, so he went into the adjacent living room and scrolled on his phone. I told my mom I would marry Tom regardless, and that if she chose not to be part of my life, that was her decision. She called me ungrateful and continued screaming. Things escalated again when she demanded that I hand over my phone. Long story, I am actually on Tom's family's plan. She also demanded that I go to my room. I said no, that I am an adult, and she threw a 3/4 full bottle of botanist gin at me. It hit my arm and shattered on the floor. That is when my brother stepped in and pulled me out of the house. We could hear her breaking things and swearing as we stood outside. Since my flight is scheduled early in the morning, my brother drove me to his friend's apartment near the airport. He works at the airport and lives about 15 minutes away. I had never met his friend before. My mother texted me multiple times asking where I was and calling me awful names again, but nothing else happened. I am writing this now from the airport, waiting to board my flight. I have a bruise on my arm, but it is not serious. Tom thinks I should have called the police, but I just could not do that to my mom, even if that ends up being the last time I ever speak to her. My brother brought me all my belongings around 2 a.m. and then took me to a hotel connected to the airport. He is a saint. This is only half the update. After I left the house, during the drive to my brother's friend's place, I called Tom hysterically. He told me he thought he should tell his parents, and I agreed. After we hung up, around 10:30 p.m., Tom pulled his parents aside and told them everything. They had seen pictures of my mother on my Instagram before and had not recognized her. But once they looked again, they confirmed it was the Rachel they knew. Melissa cried and cried. Tom's dad, whom I will call Richard, said the situation was very strange. They asked Tom a lot of probing questions, including whether we had been sexual and whether my mother knew. Tom told them everything. They were disappointed in him, but they did not dwell on that. After Tom explained what had happened with my mom earlier that night, Richard and Melissa completely changed their tone. They told him they still supported our marriage, but needed to make a game plan for how to handle this moving forward. They texted me saying incredibly kind things, telling me nothing had changed, that I was still their daughter, and that they loved me. Melissa also shared why my mom became estranged from them. This is only her side, and I may never hear my mom's, but apparently when my mom was in high school, she started to unravel emotionally. She would yell at her mother constantly and accuse her of favoring Melissa. Their father was the coach of the girls' basketball team, which Melissa played on but my mom did not, and my mom felt rejected by both parents. During their senior year, my mom ran away with an older boy, not my dad. His family knew my grandparents well, so they assumed she was safe. But my mom told them she would never speak to them again, and she kept her word. The last they heard about her was 3 years later, when the boy's parents said they had broken up, and she had moved to another city. This was the city where she later met my dad. They wrote letters she never answered and eventually respected her wish for no contact. All of this came secondhand from Tom, who heard it from his mom, while I was coming down from hysteria in an airport hotel room at dawn. The details may be fuzzy, but that is what I know. How I'm doing. I'm heartbroken and scared. I've only seen my mother be violent once before, when she threw a brick at my brother for sneaking a girl in. I was always the perfect child, and now I cannot imagine her ever speaking to me again. It feels like I chose the people she felt rejected by over her. My heart breaks for my mom, but I love Tom, and I do not believe it is fair to either of us to abandon this love. I am also scared of what she might do next. She went to my grandmother's house and my brother's girlfriend's house trying to find me. My brother refused to tell her where I was. She knows where my apartment on campus is. I have considered moving in with Tom for safety, but his parents asked us to stop being intimate until marriage, and I do not think they would approve of us living together. That said, they have been incredibly kind. They paid for my hotel stay. Tom was nervous about me staying at my brother's friend's apartment. I was mostly afraid of the roaches. They are texting me as I write this, sending florist options, and talking excitedly about our wedding. Overall, I am okay, but I am terrified of the unknown. How Tom's doing. He is very anxious being away from me and incredibly grateful to my brother. He wants me to block my mother's number, but I am not ready. He encouraged me to make an appointment with my therapist, and we are hoping to attend a few sessions together. He has apologized endlessly and feels like he should have figured this out sooner, but it is not his fault. If we had known earlier, we might never have had the love we now share, and I believe that love is worth it. This morning, his father warned him not to share this secret with anyone. Tom is nervous about how our grandparents would react if they found out. If anything else happens, I will update again. We are still reading all the comments. The encouragement, especially from those who urged us to tell our parents, gave us the strength to do the right thing. Even though I regret telling my mother, I think it was better than lying and creating a long-term deception. Thank you all for the support. Feel free to ask any questions. It genuinely helps us think through every angle. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.